Welcome to Champagne Problems Podcast. I am your host, Robbie Shaw. Join us as we explore mental and emotional well-being, physical optimization, and the journey to discovering your highest self. Champagne Problems is brought to you in proud partnership with Bond Buzz, the alcohol-free social spirit. Bond Buzz is an award-winning alcohol-free functional beverage company creating adult drinks that are health-forward, all-natural, and uncompromising. They're on a mission to create a future where feeling good and getting buzzed exist in absolute harmony and not at the expense of your health. Their bold concoctions offer focus and energy while calming the nervous system for a night on the town or a productive afternoon. Bond Buzz uses only natural ingredients and a hyper-functional blend of nootropics, adaptogens, and functional mushrooms to amplify the sensory experience. If you're looking for a drink to help you cool off after work or a drink to stimulate your mind and body without the harmful, icky hangovers, drink Bond Buzz for good days only. Brittany Harris, welcome to Champagne Problems.
Thank you.
2 years. 2 years we've been talking about this.
Here we are.
Here we are. Man, it's been a very short 2 years. Patrick and I met you at Global Exchange, right?
Yeah.
2 years ago, I think was the first time we officially kind of crossed paths. And then I had met David, and he kept saying, "Oh, we got to do a podcast. We got to do this, we got to that, and we'll do it next month. We'll do it next month." And it never happened, which is fine. Not complaining, just highlighting our excitement. Very glad you're here. We're honored to have you here. You have a way about you that made us want to have you on, and it's your welcoming personality. You have an intimidating look, but then as soon as you start talking, it's oh, she's cool. She's very kind, and you have a presence about your communication that is very appealing. So very glad to have you here. Thank you for making the trip just for us.
Well, thank you. Thanks, honestly, for having me. I guess I could probably unpack in an hour whatever you just said about my presence.
Well,
I appreciate
That's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, we're gonna
get
dive
there.
right in.
We all?
Dive right in. All right, so we like to start with rapid fire questions. So let's get you a little nervous and uneasy. No, I'm kidding. It's very easy and fun questions. First question: what was your first live music concert and where?
Oh man. So my first live music concert was Dina Carter. I was probably around 12 or 13 years old. My parents took me, and it was at the state fair in Utah. And she sang on stage with no shoes on. And it's probably a little bit different than I am now, right? Probably more of a type 1 personality. But man, when I saw that, I was like, yeah, that's it.
I like it.
And then her music just spoke to my soul, the whole thing. I was like, yeah.
Very cool.
All right, what's your favorite smell?
Oh, gall. This one's a little bit unfair. I'm not going to lie, guys.
I hate that question.
I love it.
So
I was like, what?
this is constantly talked about in our home. I have a very, very sensitive olfactory unit, and it is like painful. So I could tell you so many things about smell, but my favorite smell, I think laundry's been used because it's just fresh and clean. A few things beat like the new car smell.
What's your least favorite smell?
Yeah, that's so unfair. Anything that just hits you and you're like, oh, and it happens like 9 or 10 times a day. It's awful.
Especially with a sensitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's painful.
Sniffer.
Like my husband and I, it's a whole thing.
This one's a little bit odd.
Perfect.
Like that one
yes,
wasn't.
I feel really good about
Smell
it.
is good. I like smell because
Smell can go many ways.
it really can. And I've gotten so many great answers. Some people are like, fresh concrete. And then one other guy was like cherry. Like, they're just great.
Yes, I love that guy.
Teddy Ruxpin, or what was that? There was somebody that
That's right.
said something
Like the
about
like the old toy?
or like a strawberry shortcake figurine.
Yeah, that's right.
We've had some really good answers.
Good answers. If you had to change your first name, what would you change it to?
Oh, gall. My name's Brittany, and I was born in, the 1980s, so everybody's name was Brittany. It was just spelled with like an I or a Y or an EE.
Huh.
Probably something simple, classic, like Anne or something, Yeah. That I would have to tell you that was a little outside of the box, but probably like something
Anne.
more simple.
My wife and my daughter. Anne.
Anne.
Well.
So, and my daughter's name's Grace Ann.
Yeah,
Simple.
good name.
So, yeah. Which I don't know that I look like an Ann. That again, that's a whole other.
Well, you would eventually.
You could pull it
where
off.
that came from, guys. It just
Eventually
spoke
it
to
would.
me.
What's your favorite setting? Like, what brings you the most peace in terms of like, travel or something in your home, or like, where do you feel the most?
Gosh, this is another one. I mean, I think it's probably pretty simple to say the ocean or the beach, but I live in Provo, Utah, and there's a little place on the hill called East Lawn Cemetery, which is so weird and kind of unique for me. I'm not much of a cemetery girl. I got a whole stuff about that, but there's a specific
As opposed to all the cemetery girls.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, don't even know what that is. If you are, that's great. It actually was a little bit eerie to me, but there's a special spot up there that I actually go and take some time. And off to the left, you can see an American flag, and she's doing her thing in all of her glory. And if you kind of look in front of you, it's just the most magnificent view of Utah County. And you can see all the homes, you can see Utah Lake, you can see Mount Timpanogos, you can see up Provo Canyon. And, that place has served me well. I got a divorce when I was 28 years old. And I remember the first time my kids weren't with me. When I got divorced, I really didn't plan to be a part-time mom. That was not part of the story at all. Wow. Already almost to
Here
tears.
we go.
I asked for those paper towels or napkins. I was like, it's on. But yeah. I went up there and I had a moment and I was like, it's gonna be okay. They're in good hands. They were with their dad, who's great, and yeah.
Wow.
It was the beginning of my peaceful place, and now everybody knows where it is. So come join me if you're there. It's cool.
Interrupt me.
Yeah.
So maybe you are kind of a cemetery gal.
I am, right? And I also have to tell you, like, the sunsets and sunrises there. So I'm a big time sunset person. I think that would be another thing I would talk about. But man, there's something.
That's
of another
interesting.
world.
I mean, there is a perception or a I don't know, something that's just ingrained where cemeteries kind of feel eerie, like you said. They're scary. Of course, movies and any kind of media portrays them in kind of a haunting way, but really, that's not how they're designed to be. Yeah. They probably that particular cemetery is in that location for a reason.
Yeah.
Somebody was like, wow, look at this. Let's do it here.
Yeah. And when I tell you guys, it's epic. Like it's pretty awesome. And
That's
I'm
cool.
a freaking diehard American, just red, white, and blue, bleed it if I can.
I love it.
And so when I sit there and I kind of watch that do its thing, it's like, oh yeah, reminders of freedom and just the whole thing.
Good stuff.
It's good.
Good.
It
All right.
works for me.
If you could know the answer to any question, what would you ask?
Yeah, no, I think I've heard you ask this one.
Yeah.
And, I've never really been one that stays up at night of like, what's life like after this? It just, it's a little too far for me for this one. I deal with some personal health complications.
Yeah.
And I'm always curious, like, how can I use this to continue to serve, right? Am I getting what I'm supposed to learn from this? And so something along that line. And then also, am I where I need to be to serve the purpose I'm supposed to serve? That's one that always gets me.
I like it. I like it. I know people always kind of assume that is a that like afterlife kind of question, and often people answer that, but often people are like,
I don't want to know the answer to that.
Or they're like, I wish I could learn how to have better directions. Like it's like very trivial stuff sometimes. That's the good part of that question.
I like that one. What are better directions?
Right.
I want to know why Wi-Fi doesn't work on flight.
How do I get to the Pizza Hut from here?
All we're trying to figure out. That's so great.
All right, let's go. Let's go into some conversation here.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your background. Like, where are you from? Provo, childhood, college?
I grew up in Provo, Utah. I have to tell you, it's the greatest place on earth. I got the good fortune of traveling, but there was literally no place like home. And I say all the time, there's this really cool Provo Canyon trail that I can get to on my feet in about 5 minutes, and then you're just on it, right? You go up, you see this beautiful falls named Bradaville Falls, and I say all the time, if I can't get there within about 5 minutes, I'm way too far from home. And so grew up relatively awesome childhood, incredible parents, 2 great brothers. I was a cheerleader in high school. Loved my high school experience. It was awesome high school experience. Fun, exciting. Went to a little bit of college. At the time, it wasn't really my jam. Tried it. My parents owned a hair school at the time. And I really wanted to go to culinary school, but all the culinary schools were out of state. And that just really wasn't what was going to happen. So I was like, I'll just try hair school. And I, at the time, had been receptioning at a place called Cirque Lodge in Provo, Utah, and started there as a receptionist.
How did that happen?
So interesting. So my parents actually owned this hair school that I went to, right? It was the family trade, and they'd owned it since 1986. And they also owned Cirque Lodge. Oh. But we came about that a little bit differently. And in 2003, I'd receptioned there for quite a few years, when I was about 15 years old. And now I'm 17, 18 years old, looking for a trade. I go to hair school. Family is still, really digging into Cirque. It's what's happening. It's new for our family. They're still putting some of the components together. It had been operating at the time for roughly 4 years. And, our family still gathers. So my grandmother's 87 years old, and we have gathered around her home on Sunday since I can remember. And family conversations, they were in the jewelry business growing up. My parents ran this hair school and salon, very, very successful in our community. And they were about 4 years into Cirque Lodge, and obviously that comes with a backstory. Happy to go into at least my side of it, at least as I saw it. But at this time, Cirque Lodge was taking off, and a lot of our family conversations were really focused on what was happening at Cirque. And I remember having this wild epiphany. At this point, I'd gone through hair school. I had a couple kids, and I had a pretty large epiphany of like, I think I have chosen the wrong family business here. At that time, it was probably in the sights to see me. I was directing there. I really disliked doing hair. It did not speak to me. It was not it for me. Cosmetology school, whatever we want to call it. And I remember turning to my dad and being like, I have absolutely chosen the wrong family business. What would it look like to do something else? At that time, I'd stopped receptioning. I had a couple kids, and my career at Cirque really started after that. I had 2 children. I was a stay-at-home, kind of staying at home that time. I was doing some work at the hair school, and Gary Fisher, who was the director of operations, right? He ran Cirque under the founding of my parents, and he said, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm doing some hair, and I'm doing the mom thing. And he said, you want to come work at Cirque? You want to come, a couple times a week? He's like, I'm kind of looking for like a hospitality Martha Stewart kind of gal. And I was like, well, that sounds awesome. I can put together some whatevers. And that's actually how my lasting career started at Cirque. So I came in kind of in the hospitality piece, and then also as Gary's assistant. And so that was kind of the beginning of Cirque for me.
Wow.
But,
how long ago was that? How long Cirque been open?
So Cirque actually opened in 1999.
Okay.
A small 16-bed facility up in Sundance, Utah. Yeah.
I would love to hear a little of the backstory as to why.
You want to hear the Cirque Lodge backstory, and again, this is how I see it, right? So unfortunately, our family was riddled by the disease of alcoholism. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that we knew. My mother's sister was killed on Christmas Eve. She was 16 years old by a drunk driver. Her father was actually an incredible alcoholic. He was one of the happy guys, Her brother fought in Vietnam, came back with some pretty severe PTSD, but had some elements of he was bipolar, and also got taken off life support later on due to his use and alcoholism. Mm-hmm. So my mom's family was pretty genetically loaded. And as we've come to learn, this disease doesn't discriminate. And it's also pretty, genetic. So my father gets an idea. Again, this is how I see it. Dad, if this looks different to you, if you're even going to listen to this, that's a whole other thing. But
hey, you better.
So, my dad gets this idea. He owns some property up in Sundance, Utah that he just loved. Beautiful views, incredible. I mean, it's on the sunny side of Sundance, and it's some land he had admired and loved his whole life. So he bought some property, and there actually was 1 acre down the road that came with the property that he purchased that wasn't really sanctioned into the community, right? And it sure wasn't a buildable lot. Mm-hmm. So he kind of went into the inner workings of getting permits, and that was a whole crazy story of how he even got this lot to be buildable, and let alone then run a commercial operation on it. But after jumping through multiple hoops, he ends up building a 10,000 square foot structure, a cabin type structure that is completely mirrored on both sides. It's got 2 kitchens, and I don't know that he had no clue what he was going to do with it, but he for sure didn't think it was going to be what it is today. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Our family had gone through some health complications. We have a lot of type 2 diabetes in our family and some other stuff. And we thought, maybe he was going to go into is it going to be a bed and breakfast? No, it doesn't fit right. Is it going to be a wellness center? Maybe people can come and heal. We are literally in the heart of Sundance. Mm-hmm. And if any of you guys have seen it, it's like, people have been coming to the mountains for eons to heal. Yeah. And it was like, man, if we can get well, we can get well here for sure. Mm-hmm. And at the time the structure is being built, it's almost finished. Our own immediate family was being devastated by the disease. Mm. And we didn't know, really. Our loved one in our life was misdiagnosed psychiatrically, self-medicating. I can still hear my mom vividly cry. I can still hear her cry. Mm. And they had done everything they knew to do at that time, knowing what they knew. So been in and out of, ranches, AA community meetings, seen a psychiatrist. My family was really digging in to get educated and help our loved one. And my dad, again, tells the story probably differently than I do because I wasn't there, but he was on the property and he was in prayer about, what am I going to do with this place? And he had an overwhelming premonition, or whatever anybody wants to call it. And he'd already hired employee number 1. And employee number 1 just retired 1.5 years ago. So he'd been with my dad this whole time. A gentleman by the name of Dave Beck. And my dad called Dave and he said, "Hey, Dave, I know that I have got you geared up for this wellness type, blah, blah, blah." And he said, "But I got to do something else." And he said, "I want to create a drug and alcohol treatment facility here in Sundance, Utah." And he's like, "I have been called to do it. I think it's going to be greater than anything I could do myself. And if I remember right, Dave said to him, that's for the greater and higher good. Let's go. Let's do this." Mm. And so that's essentially how our family got into it. And then from there, it just, Cirque's got an incredible story. It's got an incredible story of heart and, bringing Gary Fisher on and Bev Resch and how they found their way to Cirque. And I think if you were to collectively ask the original executive members, which were those 4, so Richard Losey, Gary Fisher, David Beck, and Beverly Resch, they were all connected to do something greater than themselves. And I think that's what kept them together.
That's good shit.
Are you happy you asked?
It's helped a lot of people.
So,
wow.
It takes a village, though, right? Mm-hmm. We say all the time, what we can't do alone, the world over, we can do together. And it's been powerful.
Thank you for telling that.
Yeah, sure. Are we at time?
No.
Like, it's a lengthy story.
No.
It was
All right.
phenomenal.
Let's
Just,
go.
I don't know. I mean, you never know how things start and what the inception is and why. And
Yeah, and just to button up some of that, our loved one at that time didn't dig in at Cirque Lodge, but continued to get, he's sober. He's in recovery. Works in an awesome program. He's one of the coolest people in my world. Beautiful marriage. Incredible family. He's a granddad. Yeah. He's doing it.
beautiful.
And he works at Cirque today, has worked there, he's employee, very, very, very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And he carries the message forward.
Golly,
So it's cool.
It's freaking awesome.
that's beautiful. Well, where do you want to go?
Yeah. Let's go back to you. Your early time at Cirque. You're there working as a receptionist.
Yeah. So
Then what happens?
early time at Cirque, working there as a receptionist, it was really interesting. Our entrance at Cirque used to be in this east lobby, right? And really you walk in about 10 feet, and then there's a door. But as a receptionist, I kind of sat there and, I didn't know much. I started when I was 15, right? My reception career ended when I was like 17 and a half. So I was only there a couple of years.
You were tired.
Yeah, it was exhausting. Actually, I will tell you, don't underestimate the reception desk, right?
yeah.
We were the hub of where those calls were
I've
going.
done a little admin in my time.
So, one thing that I talk about with our families now during Family Week, which is a big part of my story, is, individuals would walk in and that's where they'd come in, to begin their experience at Cirque Lodge. And they'd walk in and, their skin was dull. Their skin might have been gray or jaundiced. Talk about yellow, right? The eyes, the whites of their eyes were, not only a little bit hollowed, but they were sullen and gray or, yellow. And that's all I'd really see. They'd come in, I'd get to see them when they first entered, and we housed all their phone, all their phone messages. So individuals would come down and, 3 days in, 1 week in. All of a sudden, in about 1 week, they'd come and get their phone messages, and, their whites of their eyes were white again. And their skin would start to glow. And I think if I were to define it, I'd probably say, that's what hope looks like. You're watching that light turn back on. Mm-hmm. And my 15, 16, 17-year-old brain couldn't compute it. It was like, what happens behind that door? And I used to literally think Beverly Rush was the Wizard of Oz. Mm-hmm. I was like, what magic happens in those halls? And again, I didn't even know there were rooms. I didn't know there were group rooms. I didn't know there was cognitive therapy. No clue. But I knew something miraculous happened in there. And so I went home, like I said, had a couple babies. I had, my son Cash and my daughter Grace. And I got invited to come back and essentially assist for Gary Fisher. And I was all in. I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to get to see like the magic behind the curtain. Let's go. And that's really where it shifted for me. So
you've been there. I mean, you're what, 30, upper 30s, 38. Yeah. And so you've been there 20 plus?
Yeah, in and out. I say consecutively 14, but, quite a few minutes before. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
And now you're the executive director.
What were they
How's that
thinking?
feel?
I mean, it feels kind of like I say, I'm a mom of 6 and I'm ill-equipped for that. And you and I joke around about imposter syndrome sometimes.
Yeah.
But, that hit heavy and hard within the first month of my stead, especially taking a seat at the chair that a true giant sat at.
Gary
for many years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've never met him, but I've heard so many good things about that man.
The most inclusive. To know him is to love him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's the guy. Yeah. Truly. Yeah, I feel very, very blessed to have been mentored by him. So yeah, it's been cool.
All right. Well, I can't decide if we want to like go into more trade talk or I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I'd love to hear maybe some cool stories about things that you've seen or transformations that you've seen, or tell us about Cirque. You know, what are some of the things that stand out in your mind that you guys do really well, that like really hits home with you?
Oh man, you know, we've served almost 7,800 individuals, you know, and where do you start, right? I think that's a miracle in and of itself, really. I remember one day I came in and I was having a moment, just looking for some clarity and trying to figure out, you know, my part of my own story. But I remember saying to Gary, I said, Gary, with how heavy this work can be, you know, how do you do this? Why? You know, why do we do this every day? I know how we do it, but why? You know, what is it for you? And he said, oh, Britt, you know, he said, I'm addicted to the miracle. You know, that's the truth of what we get to see. Like I said, we watch people come in that are hopeless. We watch people come in who, you know, their family lives are shattered. They're isolating. And then we watch or get to help facilitate. I talk a lot about how I just get to be a conduit, but we get to watch lives transform. You know, and it's interesting, you know, what are the stories? Everybody wants to hear the story of, you know, the destitution and the tragedy. You know, and the amazing part that I think is getting to watch the miracle. You know, and it's hard. It is heavy works. We've got lives in our hands every day. But one thing I do know is every single life is worth it. Mm-hmm. And I love that. You know, my favorite parts are sitting down with women of all ages, getting to hear their story, remind them of their worth. Yeah. I mean, it's cool.
Yeah. It's about the coolest.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, where else do you see that?
Nowhere.
You really don't. I mean,
every once in a while you see it at cosmetology school, but it's different, guys. It's not the same.
A little different. The makeup creates the glow a little more there.
No, but you know, that's actually, you know, it's a really interesting piece. This is such a sidebar, but so we actually have a hair salon at Cirque Lodge.
Oh, yeah.
And for many years, you know, people were like, why do you do that? I actually think even Gary asked my father once, like, hey, Richard, like, is this a component? And, you know, Gary, that is actually one story that Gary tells, is that we had a woman come in and she was shattered. She was broken, very, very fragile, whale of a story. And upon admissions, she said, hey, you know, Gary, could I get my hair done? Mm. And Gary said, well, actually, yes, yeah, you know, ma'am, you can. You know, I don't remember
professionals down the street.
Yeah, absolutely. So he takes her downstairs. And he said he actually went down and got her when she was done to help walk her to group. And at the time, you know, you guys, we were really small. We started as a small 16-bed facility in Sundance, Utah. We now have expanded into a studio location in Orem. And we were in the studio location, but we were still small when this experience happened to Gary. And Gary wasn't, I don't think if you were to ask him, I don't think he was all the way bought into the hair salon thing, right? And he was like, man, this is...
Okay.
Operative, whatever the cost is, you know, he's our operations guy. Comes down, woman gets her hair done. And Gary goes to greet her and take her to group. And she looked at him in the eyes and she said, Gary, I'm beautiful. Mm. And Gary said, yes, you are.
And never forget it.
Yeah, you know, and those are the things we do forget in our use, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's substance or it's an alcohol, you know, we start to isolate and we forget who we are. And that was her story. And she looked at him and she said, I think I can do this.
Oh my God.
And he's like, yeah, you can.
Keeping the hair salon.
Yeah, fine. You know, I love it. We have Krista now in the hair salon and it's like, oh yeah. Krista's a mainstay and a life force of what we do there.
That's awesome.
But seriously, you know, why do you need all these different modalities? What does that have to do with treatment? And it's like, you
Everything.
know, to remind people that the human condition is human, you know, and you're worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's kind of like whatever works. Right? I mean,
But isn't that it, right?
Yeah.
Why do
Yeah.
you have so many modalities? Why does
Exactly.
Cirque have, you know, a third step flight experience? Why do we, you know, have music therapy? Why do we have a labyrinth? Why do we do sweat lodges, right? Because I will tell you, Richard's like, yeah, why do we have all these modalities, you know? But the truth is, and what our clinical director says all the time is it just takes a spark.
And you
just
never
looking
know
for
where
that.
that's going to come from.
No. You know, are we going to have that moment at the top of the Wasatch Peak that, you know, do you need a helicopter to get sober? Absolutely not. But you need a helicopter to get to the top of Wasatch Peaks. It's a glorified van, cool transportation. But once you're up there and you have that moment of like, wow, you know, if that's where your awakening is, we'll take it. You know, if your awakening is in a labyrinth, if your awakening is on a simple walk, we're just looking for the spark.
They're just sitting in a group room,
Yeah.
you know, or sitting at a table eating a meal next to somebody that
Cares.
just got there.
Totally.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
But you're looking for it. We're looking for it. That's what we're hoping for.
that's the thing. I mean, that's the code, or the code to be cracked is, what is it going to be for the person that turns on that light? And I mean, I was just working with someone yesterday, and it was like, you know, it was one of the kind of tragic things that occurred to him that created this level of fear and this, you know, scared shitless kind of mentality that did it. And it's like, yeah, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be these other things. And you know, as people that work in this field, you're always trying to figure out what it is, because it can be different for every one of them. And it doesn't have to be this big explosion of a bottom, you know? I mean, it, you know, those things, you never know. You never know.
Yeah.
Well, I love the fact that there's this like detox. Now you're going to the beauty school. And then we'll start.
Yeah.
That's cool. Let's do a little imposter syndrome.
Oh, let's do it. Rock on.
If that's your reaction, then we're definitely doing it.
Yeah, let's do it.
No, because it's so prominent and it's so prevalent, and when we describe imposter syndrome, when anybody kind of says, you know, what it really means, most people go, yeah, I got a little bit of that.
Yeah.
I got a little bit of that. You know, and we did have Valerie Young.
Yeah. Oh, I listen.
She's great. But I know that you've done a talk or two on it. So let's just talk about it. We can either share personal experience or maybe we just touch on what it is, since you've done a talk. What how do you describe it?
Well, and I guess I should say I brought it into a component of a speaking opportunity I'd been asked to do.
Gotcha.
Because that's the only way I know how to do it, right? Let's just call it what it is. Let people know that was my experience. And then we'll go on. You know, they'd asked me to talk on leadership and women in leadership. It's quite a buzz right now, right? And there were so many elements of the speaking presentation that had triggered me. You know, okay, I'm going to speak on leadership. I've been an executive director, I think literally for a total of less than 60 days. Like, that's not even
Was this
the gold
was here,
standard
wasn't
for
it?
treatment, right?
Was
Yeah,
this was here a
Isn't
couple of
it?
years
Yeah.
ago.
I was at the
remember.
SEED conference, and were you there?
I think so.
Oh,
I
I'm
don't
so
know.
sorry. Maybe it was great. So I'd been asked to speak on women in leadership, and all of a sudden I am like, this actually goes back a little bit more, but where it started was I'm thinking, okay, I am a woman, yes. What are my feelings on this, and what does that look like? I'm going to speak on leadership. Why didn't they ask Gary? You know, I mean, let's talk to somebody who's been doing it for 30 plus years, you know, 10 years prior to Cirque. And how did I even get this gig, right? Then I even take a deeper dive to like, how am I even in the seat I'm at Cirque Lodge, right? And that's where this story, the little bits of the story with imposter syndrome started with me, was, you know, my start date in my new role was March 1st. of 2022. And I had sat next to Gary Fisher for almost 14 years in an office next to him. And watching Gary move out of Cirque Lodge was one of the hardest things that's happened to me in a long time. You know, friend, mentor. Oh, God, so many things here. So that office sat empty for about 3 weeks. And I finally had a colleague, a staff member come in, and he said, hey, when? And I said, if you're going to ask me when I'm moving in that office, you need to turn around. And I didn't realize there were so many feelings, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, it was, how do I feel? How do I fill those shoes? You know, his shoes were tasseled and loafered and worn in. Right. And I mean, he has walked some miles working for the greater good. And I'm sitting here in stilettos that are quite uncomfortable. I'm like, I don't even know if I can walk around the property in these things, let alone spearhead this operation, right? And so that's kind of where the imposter syndrome started a bit, was, you know, how am I going to fill the shoes of such a legend? And I really sat into this for a while, and I realized, you know, I've gleaned an immense amount of wisdom. Thank goodness I have the opportunity to be able to use him as a mentor and a resource going forward. You know, mm-hmm. He's never not picked up the phone for me, which is amazing to have that. And I moved into the office. And it looks different, right? It's not how Gary did it, but it's got some Gary-isms in there and mixed with my style, you know? And I say that is almost a metaphor. That's what the office looked like, but that's really how I had to look at how I was going to approach moving forward as the executive director of Cirque Lodge. And I think some of that imposter syndrome also came from, it was short-lived. It was very, very short, but this idea that it was all on me now. And that's when I am in the most trouble. And I think that that's when our clients are in the most trouble, right? When we stop using the power of people, the power of fellowship, the power of connection. You know, what I've learned over the very, very short last 2 years is, one, I'm not alone. And two, I'm only as good as my team. Mm-hmm. And I believe I have the best team in the country. Mm-hmm. And they show up and they prove that to me every single day. So, yeah.
Had you ever felt those kinds of imposter feelings before around things?
You know, probably in different areas of my life. Yeah, it's so interesting. I rarely get to talk about my mom, but she's one of my favorite subjects.
Let's do it then.
My mom was awesome and is awesome. And, you know, I grew up in a house where I never really questioned my worth. I never really, you know, and that came from my mom. Mm. My mom is one of the most loving, empowering women I've ever met.
Unconditional.
Oh, God, to the nth degree. Oh. And I come from a powerhouse of women, and that's kind of where a little bit of that leadership and kind of veered was, you know, I was able to look back, and I come from a long, long line of hardworking women. I mean, hardworking women. And with that, they were never harsh or dominant. They just would show up, suit up, get their hands dirty, probably do it in stilettos. You know, I mean, they were awesome. And so that's a little bit of where my leadership talk starts to navigate. But yeah, they were cool. They are cool. I mean, were. Mom and Grandma are still around.
Yeah, the imposter stuff, I mean, there's kind of a formal way of looking at it, and then there's just the things that we experience. And, whenever I talk about it, or even specifically with Dr. Young, it was like, we're going to go through life, not, the next step, the next thing that you do, the next job, the next whatever, the parenting, like, I've never done it before.
Yeah.
Like, of course you're going to feel those feelings. Like, I don't know what I'm doing.
No.
And people are expecting me to know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I don't. So you have this kind of inadequacy or unqualified or not even, worth the job being laid out for you. And I think that's a pretty natural feeling. And now I do understand that there is a syndrome kind of level to it.
Yeah.
That we can, or some people can go through their whole lives feeling that way. But it's also a pretty natural feeling.
Yeah, I think so. And I also think it's an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Talk about a massive opportunity for, some introspection and, it's for sure job security for my therapist, I would tell you, but it's something I actually really like, right? We say often, you don't know what you don't know, but when you do better. And for me, it's that moment of like, okay, why is this coming up? I'm curious about it. What are, I have a substance use disorder certificate, right? I didn't even graduate college. And so that'll hit me a lot. And, how am I here? How am I supposed to be leading one of the world's most renowned drug and alcohol treatment facilities? And, that hits. Yeah. And it hits hard. And, then I take it to Debbie and I process that. And, to me, in a way, it's also a gift. It's a gift to keep on learning, keep on going.
I have conversations like that with clients all the time in my practice around that idea that we're going to like figure it out, or, something's going to happen in therapy, or we're going to read something that's like all of a sudden going to take away that fear, and like the answers in the action. So it's like, you step into those roles experientially and realize through your experience that you are good enough, that you can handle it, that you are capable.
Yeah.
And that's what heals it. And then you keep pushing it out, and that's how we grow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and often that realization is not, we want it to happen. Yeah. Right? Like you read it or educate or whatever. We want to know that we're
going to be okay.
But that's the thing. Like, you're not going to be capable until you're capable.
Until you do it.
Until you do it enough to where you are capable, and then you believe you're capable. Yeah.
And sometimes it's just sitting in it,
Yeah.
Sitting in that discomfort. Oh, that's another. I mean, you and I could go way down the getting uncomfortable. But, sitting in that discomfort. But again, for me, it's just a gleaming red light of like opportunity.
Yep.
Yeah.
Here's the path.
Yeah. And it's exciting. I tell my kids all the time, okay, well, let's get curious. Be curious about that.
So that's a good question, or a good way to go with the discussion is obviously comfort and discomfort. But often, our whole world is pain adverse, right? I mean, we're emotionally, physically, we're always looking for the more comfortable route, the easier route. So how do you get to the point of being okay with that, right? I mean, I don't know if it's doing it over and over and over. I mean, I guess that certainly is part of it. But I mean, I'm always thinking about what I've learned now that I'm in my upper 40s. And so it's like, God, there's these, I'm looking at my daughter who's dealing with all these things, and I'm like, oh, well, you just got to do this. And it's like, no. She doesn't have
Shut up, Dad.
40 years of not just doing this.
Yeah.
It's just, how do you get to that point, or how do you look at people who are super pain averse, or averse, averse.
I think you're doing great.
I'm trying. Yeah. I'm so trying. Where am I going with this one? No, I mean, that's it. It's like, how do you teach someone that?
I feel like we could go down quite a few, or up a few verticals with this one. So cold plunging is one of my favorite topics, which you and I have discussed, offline multiple times. And I don't know if I had talked to you. I know you guys mentioned it, but have you read the book Comfort Crisis?
Yes.
Robbie talks about it all the time. I'm surprised he didn't ask that question.
I was hoping it was coming, but it's one of my favorite topics, because, it talks about how we live in a world where we go from our 72-degree home to our 72-degree car right. to our 72-degree office. And then we go home and do it again, right? And wow, thank goodness for modern comforts. That's cool.
Sure. 68 degrees. Yeah.
But 72 might be a little uncomfortable for some, so we got to drop it down to like the healthy 68.
71, please.
But, man, having the conversation about adolescence is a whole different, happy to go down that.
Sure.
That lane too, not that I have any answers. But for me, so my husband and I started cold plunging in the better part of March of 2021. And we'd go behind my grandmother's house, and my grandmother's house has this incredible river behind it, the Provo River. I was telling you about the Provo River Trail that I walk up. And as a kid, we were never allowed to even be near the river, right? I mean, talk about
'cause it's moving.
Harm and fatality and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, I'm 30-something years old, and it's like, ooh, I can get in it? And the reason I started getting in it, because I was having I'm dealing with some health complications for the better part of a decade now. And we didn't own a cold plunge, or, I was kind of doing the ice bath thing, throwing some ice in my tub, and it was fine. But my husband's like, let's go get in the river.
Not like getting in the river.
What?
It's not like getting in the river.
It's not like getting in the river.
It is not like getting in the river.
No, the rivers are the best.
So we got in a couple times. And the first time we got in, I think we both lasted like 45 seconds. And it was like, okay. Yeah. We were out, And we got to a place where we could get in the river for about 5 minutes a day. And, I talk about it. So like, okay, we went and got in the river. But really, it's what happened while we were in there, right? So all of a sudden, we're in there and we are filling Mother Nature. Everything energetically that the earth provides was happening, right? You've got the calming of the water, the rippling of the white caps, the small little snapping and clapping of the trees. And, a couple of weeks into it, my husband said, what are you grateful for? We had our moment of gratitude, right? And all of a sudden it's 6 minutes. And I was like, oh, let's do that. And our day shifted, and our minds shifted, and our outlook shifted. And so I don't know. I think for me, the cold plunge goes in, when the pain of when the pain of the solution outweighs the pain of the problem, you'll do something different. And as I started going through that practice, I started using it as a daily morning, almost ritual, right? It became part of my morning piece. And it's the same thing we ask our clients to do at Cirque Lodge. Get back to basics, but what do basics look like? We're going to ask you to get up. We're going to ask you to have breakfast. We're going to ask you to come in. We're going to do a 5-minute meditation. We're going to go into community. From community, you're going to go into cognitive therapy, some group sessions. You're going to have an awesome lunch. We're going to do an afternoon experiential, and we're going to follow the evening with a 12-step component. And it's like, why do we do that? And then it's dinner,
it works.
Another meeting, and it's lights out. But why do we do that? We do that because consistency and habits over time, create some pretty cool things. But for me, my morning's something I don't mess with now. I try to stick within those habits, and it really sets me up, I think, for the best amount of success I can have with a day that multiple things get thrown at me, Yeah.
Gotta keep calm. God, I want to get in the damn river now.
I've been trying to get him to plunge.
Grandma would love to have you. So next time you guys are there, I'm dunking Robbie and myself. So
I'm in.
But literally, it's
holding him under.
Yeah. You just got to beat 45 seconds.
How long can you do it now? What's your time limit?
I've done 9, but that's
get it done.
Like in ice.
Yeah.
Ice is hard. Rivers are hard. Ice is real hard.
Ice seems harder. So ice like in a contained container, right, or a moving body?
Moving is even harder, obviously, because you're feeling it, and you can't you can't do this.
You can't get warm.
Right. And you know,
Incubate.
in an ice bath, you can. I mean, I'll ball up sometimes. You can, you know, clench your fists and get your, I mean, because right under here, woo, boy, that's where your organs are, man. That, you know, if you get tight like this, you can keep somewhat warm. Ice is hard. Ice hurts a little worse.
Like the good hurt, though. You know,
At first
I'm doing something hurts.
Oh, of course. I mean, of course, it's kind of like the pain of, you know, muscle pain after working out. You know, it's that's the good hurt.
I miss those videos.
But I used to video.
In pain.
Yeah, you like that, right?
Patrick's like living for it. Yeah. Oh, the benefits were great, but the pain looked awesome.
I'm about to go down to Costa Rica in 2 weeks with Laird Hamilton and Gabby Reese.
Nice.
And do their 3-day deal. And that is chock full of ice baths.
Yes.
Tons. I mean, they do the therapy version of it. So it's ice bath, 5 minutes, you know, 190
sauna.
degree sauna.
Yes, sir.
Ice bath, sauna, you know, like 4 or 5 sessions.
I love it. So we've created that in our home now. We have a sauna and a red light, and it is a cold plunge. Again, if I can, I'll get in the river whenever I can, but it hasn't been often because I've been doing it in my house. But yeah. I love a little cold immersion, heat therapy.
I'll go from the jacuzzi to the pool. That's where I'm at with all that shit.
Hey, baby steps.
Yeah.
You know,
Whatever
progress.
works. Yeah. Whatever works.
Tell me what's new at Cirque. What's going on? What's the future look like? What are we?
Yes.
Where are we going?
Man, you know, it's so this and that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Push Cirque.
Exciting to be able to talk about this. So, again, Cirque started as a small 16-bed facility, gorgeous cabin up in Sundance, Utah. We moved down to our studio location in 2003 and opened a detox unit there about 8 years ago now. And, you know, things were solid. I don't know how else to describe them. It was comfortable, you know? And my father, Richard, the founder, being the visionary man that he is, and the best part about that is, you know, my dad's a visionary, but he's an executor. And that's a rarity, right?
Rare to have both.
Yeah.
He's again, you hear the word dreamer, and he's a dreamer, but he's an action, you know, guy too. So in 2018, and really the better part of many, many years with my dad, you know, he always was talking about dreams and not necessarily expansion, because Cirque Lodge is never going to go, oh gosh, at least while it's under, I think, my watch, and I would say the rest of my family's watch. You know, my brother's the director of operation, and my other brother's the director of media services. And so I think collectively, while it's under our watch, it will still be in 2 locations, you know, one in Sundance, Utah, and one in Orem. And so as my dad's kind of dreamed into many ideas, in 2018, we looked outside of his office, and he told me his vision for the next couple years. And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds cool, great. And at that time, there was talks of me moving into the executive director role, but Gary was very, very much still the director, right? So in 2019, my dad decides to move forward with an 80,000 square foot expansion of the studio. And we were getting closer to, you know, Gary was talking about his retirement. We were talking about succession planning. There was some movement. And my dad had dug this big hole on the northwest side of the property. And somewhere in 2020, I looked at him and I was like, have you had fun yet? Like, you gonna cover that up? Like, let's just go back to business as usual, you know? And from 2019 forward, structures started being built, and then COVID hit. So Cirque has been in an 80,000 square foot expansion for the better part of 4.5 years. And it's been a lot. And once again, Richard was right. My dad was right. And it's been freaking awesome. So January 8th, we housed our first client in our new residential wing at the studio. And so what we did was we took our residential rooms out of the current and existing, the main building that we're in, and we moved them into a resident wing that, man, I have to say we're pretty proud of it. You know, floor to ceiling windows, which was something that we weren't able to have in our existing building. A pretty incredible detox unit Again, people come in and they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's what we found the most. Just,
'Cause-
not that they don't want to get clean, not that they don't want to get on the road to recovery. They're really scared of being uncomfortable
Oh,
Yeah.
in that beginning moments. That's terrifying. And so we've really tried to exert as many efforts as possible to create a really comfortable environment, a 14-bed detox facility with 2 private rooms. And we have a 65-bed residential wing now. And we also have a 9-unit level 7 area. And level 7 is our continuum of residential care. We have clients who've been with us for 90 days and they're not quite ready to go to transitional care or not quite ready for a sober living. They still need a little bit more structure. They still need the groups. They still need things like that, but they want a little bit more freedom. They want to go get a job. They want to learn how to build more life skills, resume building, learning how to cook and what's nutritional and things like that. They're integrated more into outside meetings. And they could possibly go to college. And that's what our level 7 provides. So yeah, pretty big expansion. And then all while doing that, because if that wasn't enough fun, Cirque Lodge resides on 12 acres. And my dad really, really wanted to turn the grounds into a 12-step path. And he executed it, and it is wicked awesome.
What do you mean? What does that mean?
So we created a 12-step path over 12 acres. It's a half a mile circumference
like
that goes around the facility. And, at each step, we are deeply rooted in the 12-step program at Cirque Lodge. It's a big component of ours. And so they can go down and they can sit at each step every, however many feet around the 12 acres. And, they can reflect, they can meditate, they can read a book. And then also it's a pretty fun space. We have a labyrinth. We have a teepee and a sweat lodge. We have an incredible greenhouse that we use as part of our experiential program that, now during the winter months, they can go and they can watch something. Well, first of all, they can plant the seed, they can harvest the seed, and then they go and in the summer they can plant it and watch it flourish. And then they actually go out as part of their program, pick from the garden and get to eat it that night in the culinary experience.
Good Lord.
So watching it go full circle, for fun, couple of pickleball spaces and basketball spaces. Again, getting into recovery needs to be attractive. It needs to be appealing.
So important.
It is not a punishment, right? It's a way of living life again, free from substances. And so we've tried to create an atmosphere where the entire mind, body, and spirit can come together again. They can connect with each other. And I don't know, I think it's a pretty good place to do it. So that's the Cirque Lodge.
Sweet.
And you guys have some amazing resources in here in North Carolina. Incredible. And, if someone feels like they can go heal in the mountains, we might be the place for them.
Yeah. Wow. I love what you said about sobriety recovery looking attractive. Because it's just, that is just it. It's I don't know what you call it, just the perception or the stereotype or whatever, or your just own fears. You just think that life is boring, or it's really just it's an identity shift, no question. It's very scary, and often when we're fearful of something, we paint an inaccurate picture. That's kind of the definition of anxiety. It's just an irrational image or fear of something that hasn't happened and likely won't.
Yeah.
Right? And then if you show, here's actually what it looks like. That's a big hurdle being helped.
Every other week we take our clients bowling.
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
like, why do we do that, Patrick? Why do we take
bowling's
them
fun as hell.
Fun.
So a story, right? Another story is most clients will look at us and say, I've never done this sober.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I've never been bowling without a substance in my body. That was actually fun.
Yeah.
Right? Again, that spark doesn't just come from a group, but it's like, oh yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me I need to go bowling. It's been a while.
Because it's awesome.
I was the same way about movies. Movies were my life, but I never saw one without smoking weed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, God, movies are going to suck.
It's going to be a long 2 hours.
Right. It was phenomenal 2 hours.
Yeah.
Way better. All right.
Cool.
Britt, thank you so much.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's
you guys,
been great.
it's an absolute honor. Thank you.
Yeah.
This was wonderful. Thanks for making the trip just for us.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. What an honor. Really.
Well, anytime.